Tommy was having the worst Tuesday of his life, and it wasn't even noon yet. His coffee maker had broken that morning. His car wouldn't start. And now he was standing in his kitchen, staring at a piece of paper that made absolutely no sense. "What do you mean you're from another planet?" he asked out loud, reading the handwritten note for the third time. His roommate Zara had left the note on the counter before disappearing into her room. They had been living together for 3 months. Now, and sure, she was a little odd. She never seemed to sleep, always kept her room freezing cold, and had this weird habit of humming songs that sounded like nothing he'd ever heard before. But everyone had their quirks, right? Tommy crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash. Clearly Zara was playing some kind of joke on him. Maybe she was testing out material for a comedy show or something. She did work from home doing some kind of online translation work that she never really explained. He grabbed his toolbox from the kitchen counter and headed toward the garage. At least fixing Mrs. Peterson's fence would be straightforward. No weird roommates, no broken appliances, just him and his tools doing what they did best. The garage was Tommy's favorite place in the whole house. It smelled like motor oil, and sawdust and everything had its proper place. His grandfather's tools hung neatly on pegboards, organized by size and function. The big workbench in the center was scarred from years of projects, but it was solid as a rock. Tommy set down his toolbox and reached for his tape measure when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to find Zara standing in the doorway, but something was different about her today. Her usually pale skin had a strange bluish tint, and her eyes seemed bigger somehow. "Tommy," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I need to tell you something important." "Look, if this is about that crazy note you left, I'm not in the mood for jokes today," Tommy replied, turning back to his workbench. "It's not a joke," Zara whispered. Something in her voice made Tommy stop what he was doing. He'd never heard her sound scared before. Actually, now that he thought about it, he'd never heard her sound like much of anything. She was usually so calm and collected. Tommy turned around slowly and really looked at his roommate for the first time. Her skin definitely had that blue tint, and those weren't contact lenses, making her eyes look so large. There was also something different about the way she was standing, like she was trying to make herself look smaller. "Zara, are you feeling okay?" He looked kind of ... double quotes, trying to find the right words. "Different?" She finished for him. "That's because I am different. Very different." Before Tommy could respond, Zara took a step into the garage. Her eyes immediately went wide as she looked around the room, taking in all the tools hanging on the walls. She moved slowly, like she was walking through a museum. "Oh my," she breathed, stopping in front of the pegboard where Tommy's wrenches were displayed. "These are remarkable." Tommy followed her gaze to his wrench collection. They weren't anything special, just standard tools he'd inherited from his grandfather and added to over the years. "They're just wrenches, Zara." But Zara wasn't listening. She was staring at the far wall where Tommy kept his pride and joy, a massive pipe wrench that was icily 6 feet long. His grandfather had used it working on industrial pipes. It was so heavy that Tommy had to mount it on special brackets. Zara's mouth fell open. She raised one shaking hand and pointed at the giant wrench. "That is the most incredible thing I have ever seen in my entire life." "It's just an old pipe wrench," Tommy said, confused by her reaction. "My grandpa used it at the steel mill." Just a ... double quote. Zara trailed off and shook her head. "Tommy, where I come from, we don't have anything like this. Our tools are tiny, delicate things made from crystallized light. They're beautiful, but they can barely do anything useful." Tommy was starting to get worried. Either his roommate was having some kind of breakdown, or the note she'd left wasn't a joke after all. "Zara, what exactly are you trying to tell me?" She turned to face him, and Tommy could see tears forming in her large eyes. "I'm from a planet called Kepler 4-4b. It's about 1,200 light years from here. I came to Earth as part of an exchange program to study human culture." Tommy stared at her for a long moment. Part of him wanted to laugh, but the expression on her face was so serious, so desperate for him to believe her, that he found himself actually considering it. "Prove it," he said simply. Zara nodded and closed her eyes. Slowly, her skin began to change from pale blue to a deeper, more obvious blue color. Her eyes grew even larger, and Tommy could swear he saw tiny sparkles of light dancing across her. "Skin! Holy cow!" Tommy whispered, stumbling backward until he bumped into his workbench. "Please don't be afraid," Zara said quickly. "I would never hurt you. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you for months. I was so worried you'd kick me out or call the government or something." Tommy's mind was racing. His roommate was an alien, an actual real-life alien from outer space. And apparently, she was fascinated by his tool collection. "So when you said you do translation work, ... double quotes," Tommy started. "Earth languages?" "For other exchange students," Zara explained. "There are actually quite a few of us here, studying different aspects of human society. I was assigned to learn about human craftsmanship and engineering, and you picked me because of my tools." Zara nodded enthusiastically. "Your advertisement mentioned that you had a workshop. I thought it would be perfect for my research." "Tommy, I had no idea human tools would be so ... so magnificent." She gestured toward the wall of tools with something that looked like reverence. "On my planet, we create everything using mental energy and light manipulation. We've never needed physical tools like these. The idea of actually touching materials, of shaping them with your hands." She shivered with excitement. Tommy looked around his garage with new eyes. To him, these were just tools, things he used to fix stuff around the house or help neighbors with projects. But seeing Zara's reaction, he started to understand that maybe there was something special about them after all. "Would you like me to show you how they work?" he asked. Zara's entire face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Really? You would do that?" "Sure," Tommy said, picking up a simple screwdriver. "We can start with something easy," he began explaining. How the screwdriver worked, Tommy realized that his ordinary Tuesday had just become the most extraordinary day of his life. And judging by the way Zara was hanging on his every word, her life was about to change too. The next morning, Tommy woke up to the strangest sound he'd ever heard. It was like someone was trying to sing opera while gargling water, and it was coming from his garage. He stumbled out of bed, threw on some clothes, and headed downstairs. To investigate, what he found made him question if he was still dreaming. Zara was standing in front of his workbench, holding his hammer like it was made of pure gold. But she wasn't alone. There were 3 other people in his garage. They definitely weren't human. One looked like a tall, skinny person with green skin and 4 arms. Another seemed normal, except for the fact that his head was shaped like a triangle. The third. One was short and round with what appeared to be tentacles instead of hair. "Oh, good morning, Tommy," Zara called out cheerfully when she noticed him standing in the doorway. "I hope you don't mind, but I invited a few friends over to see your amazing tool collection." Tommy rubbed his eyes, hoping this was all just a weird dream brought on by too much pizza the night before. "Zara, there are aliens in my garage." "Oh, yes," she said matter-of-factly. "This is Clicks from the Vega system." She pointed to the 4-armed green person, who waved at Tommy with all 4 hands at once. "That's Borp from Rigel." Gah. The triangle-headed guy nodded politely. "And the little one is Squeaky from somewhere I can't pronounce." Squeaky made a sound that was indeed very much like a squeak, and gave Tommy what might have been a smile. "Heard about your tools through our communication network and just had to see them for themselves," Zara explained. "Hope that's okay?" Tommy looked around his garage. His carefully organized tool collection was being examined by 3 aliens who were treating each wrench and screwdriver like precious artifacts. Clicks was holding his socket set and making soft cooing sounds. Borp had discovered his drill bits and was arranging them in patterns on the workbench. Squeaky was just staring at his level like it held the secrets of the universe. "This is insane," Tommy muttered to himself. "Actually," said Borp, in a voice that sounded like he was talking, "through a fan, this is quite normal for us. When word gets out about something remarkable, we share the information. Your tools are unlike anything we've ever seen." "But they're just regular tools," Tommy protested. "You can buy this stuff at any hardware store." All 4 aliens stopped what they were doing and stared at him like he'd just said something shocking. "You mean there are stores full of these magnificent creations?" Clicks asked, his 4 eyes going wide. "Ah, yeah," Tommy said slowly. "There's one about 10 minutes from here." Squeaky made a series of excited squeaking sounds and started bouncing. Up and down, Zara translated. He wants to know if you'll take us there. Before Tommy could answer, his phone started ringing. It was his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Tommy dear, there are strange lights coming from your garage again and my dog won't stop howling. Is everything all right over there? Tommy looked at his alien. Visitors who were now all staring at him expectantly. Everything's fine, Mrs. Chen. Just, working on a project. Well, could you maybe work on it a little more quietly? What's that smell? It's like someone's burning cotton candy mixed with fish. Tommy sniffed the air and realized she was right. It was definitely an odd smell in the garage now. Sorry. About that, I'll keep it down. After he hung up, Borp looked embarrassed. Sorry about the odor. Happens when we get excited. We'll try to contain ourselves. Look, Tommy said, trying to wrap his head around the situation. I need some coffee. And time to think about all this. Why don't you guys just look around for a bit? But please don't break anything. He headed back to the kitchen and was relieved to find that his coffee maker had mysteriously fixed itself overnight. As he waited for the coffee to brew, he could hear the aliens in his garage making various sounds of amazement. Every few minutes, one of them would gasp or exclaim something in a language he couldn't understand. Zara appeared in the kitchen doorway. Tommy, I know this is a lot to take in, you think? He said, pouring himself a large cup of coffee. Yesterday, I thought my biggest problem was a broken fence. Now I've got aliens in my garage treating my socket wrenches like crown jewels. Really sorry about this, Zara said, sitting down at the kitchen table. I was just so excited about your tools that I posted some pictures on our social network. I didn't think it would spread so quickly. You have social media? Tommy asked, joining her at the table. Of course, how else would we stay in touch across the galaxy? It's called Spacebook. It's pretty much every inhabited planet uses it. Tommy nearly choked on his coffee. Spacebook. Yes, and your tools have gone viral. We've got requests from 17 different star systems asking for more pictures. Clix's post about your hammer got over 10,000 likes in just 2 hours. As if on cue, there was a loud crash from the garage, followed by apologetic squeaking. Should probably check on them, Zara said, jumping up from her chair. Tommy followed her back to the garage, where he found Squeaky tangled up in an extension cord while Borp and Clix tried to help free him. He was trying to understand how the cord extends, Clix explained. On our planet, we don't have anything that gets longer when you pull it. Tommy gently untangled Squeaky, who squeaked gratefully, and patted Tommy's hand with what felt like a tiny wet sponge. Maybe we should set some ground rules, Tommy suggested. And probably figure out how to explain this to my neighbors before someone calls the police. Actually, Borp said we might have a bigger problem than your neighbors. What about your? Tools has reached some very important collectors in other galaxies. They're not as friendly as we are. What do you mean by not friendly? Tommy asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know the answer. Before anyone could respond, a shadow passed over the garage. Tommy looked up through the window and saw what looked like a small spaceship hovering over his house. Oh no, Zara whispered. They found us. The spaceship hovering over Tommy's house looked nothing like the flying saucers in movies. This one was shaped like a giant black rectangle with purple lights blinking along its edges. It was also making a sound like a leaf blower mixed with elevator music, which Tommy found oddly annoying. Who is that? Tommy asked, pointing up at the ship. Zara, Clix, Borp, and Squeaky all exchanged worried looks. Finally, Zara spoke up. That's probably Vorgan, the collector. He's kind of like a cosmic antique dealer, except he doesn't ask permission. Before taking things, great, Tommy muttered. Just great. The ship slowly descended and landed in Tommy's backyard, crushing his tomato plants and leaving burn marks on his grass. A ramp extended from the bottom of the ship, and out walked the strangest creature Tommy had seen yet. Vorgan was about 8 feet tall, with purple skin and 6 arms. He wore what looked like a fancy business suit made of shimmering metal, and his head was perfectly round with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. When he smiled, Tommy could see that he had way too many teeth. Greetings, primitive Earth dweller, Vorgan announced in a booming voice. I am Vorgan, the magnificent, greatest collector of rare tools in 7 galaxies. I've come for your legendary metal implements. Tommy blinked. My what now? Don't play dumb with me, human, Vorgan said, striding toward the garage. The images on Spacebook clearly show you possess tools of incredible size and craftsmanship. I must have them for my collection. Sorry, but they're not for sale, Tommy said, stepping in front of his garage door. Vordon laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling down a mountain. Sale. Who said anything about buying? I am Vorgan, the Magnificent. I take what I want. Now hold on just a minute, Tommy said, his temper starting to flare. This is my house, and these are my tools. Can't. Just show up and steal my stuff. Watch me, Vorgan replied. Pushing past Tommy into the garage, what happened next was like watching someone discover buried treasure. Vorgan's 3 eyes went wide as he took in Tommy's tool collection. He gasped when he saw the socket sets, made cooing sounds at the power drill, and actually started drooling when he spotted the giant pipe wrench on the wall. Magnificent, he breathed. Absolutely magnificent. These primitive yet functional designs, the raw power, the brutal efficiency. He turned to Tommy with stars in his eyes. I must have that large wrench. Name your price. Told you, it's not for sale, Tommy repeated firmly. Everything has a price, Earth creature, Vorgan said. I'll give you enough galactic credits to buy your own moon. I don't want a moon, Tommy said. I want to keep my grandfather's tools. Vorgan's expression darkened. Your grandfather? This wrench belonged to your ancestor. Yeah, he used it at the steel mill for 40 years. It's the only thing I have left of him. For a moment, Vorgan looked almost understanding. Then he shook his head. Sentimental value is irrelevant. That tool belongs in my collection where it can be properly appreciated. By sitting on a shelf, never being used, Tommy shot back. My grandfather would roll over in his grave if he knew his tools were just gathering dust somewhere. They would not gather dust, Vorgan protested. It would be displayed and climate-controlled. Cases with mood lighting? That's even worse. While Tommy and Vorgan argued, more spaceships began arriving. First came a sleek silver one that landed in Mrs. Chen's flower bed. Then a rusty brown one that settled on the street, completely blocking traffic. A bright yellow ship landed on the elementary school playground 3 blocks away. Oh no, Zara whispered. Word is spreading fast. Every collector in this part of the galaxy is going to show up. She was right. Within an hour, Tommy's quiet suburban neighborhood had been transformed into something that looked like a science fiction convention parking lot. There were aliens everywhere, all of them trying to get a look at his tools. Mrs. Chen called the police who showed up, took one look at the situation, and immediately called for backup. The backup officers called their supervisor. Supervisor called the mayor. The mayor called the governor. Things were getting out of hand quickly. This is a disaster, Tommy said, watching through his kitchen window as a news van pulled up. Behind 3 different spaceships, actually, said Borp, who had been unusually quiet, I might have an idea that could help everyone. I'm listening, Tommy said desperately. What if we set up some kind of ... demonstration? You could show everyone how the tools actually work.
Okay.
Most of us have never seen tools being used for their intended purpose. Zara's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Tommy, you could give a workshop. Show them what human craftsmanship is really about. Tommy looked out at the crowd of aliens gathering in his yard. Some were taking pictures with devices that floated in the air. Others were arguing over who had seen the tools first. A few were trying to measure his garage with what looked like glowing tape measures. You want me to give a tool demonstration? To a bunch of aliens in my backyard? Tommy asked. Think about it, Zara said excitedly. Most of these beings have never seen physical creation before. They've only ever built things with energy and thought. Watching you actually make something with your hands and tools would be amazing to them. Tommy had to admit the idea wasn't completely crazy. He did enjoy teaching people about tools and craftsmanship. And if it would get all these aliens to stop fighting over his stuff, maybe it was worth a try. What would I build? He asked. Squeaky made a series of excited squeaks. Zara translated. He suggests a birdhouse. Apparently the concept of creating homes for other species is fascinating to them. Tommy looked out at the chaos in his yard. Then back at his peaceful garage full of tools. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn this insane situation into something positive. All right, he said. Let's give it a shot. Tommy had given plenty of workshop demonstrations before, but never to an audience that included beings from 17 different star systems. As he set up his workbench in the backyard, he couldn't help but notice that some of his alien guests were floating 3 feet off the ground while others had to duck under his neighbor's fence because they were 12 feet tall. "Okay, everyone," Tommy called out, holding up a piece of pine wood. "Today we're going to build a simple birdhouse using basic hand tools." A ripple of excitement went through the crowd. Several aliens started recording with devices that looked like glowing soap bubbles. Others pulled out what appeared to be notebooks made of crystallized light. "First, we need to measure our wood," Tommy explained, picking up his tape measure. "This tool helps us make sure everything fits together properly." He extended the tape measure, and half the audience gasped. Tall blue alien in the back row actually fainted and had to be caught by his friends. "On my planet," whispered a creature that looked like a walking tree, "we just think things into the right size." "This manual precision is incredible." Tommy smiled and continued, "Now we mark where we need to cut." He used his pencil to mark the wood, explaining each step carefully. The aliens watched his every movement like he was performing magic. When Tommy picked up his handsaw, the crowd fell completely silent. He made the first cut through the wood, and the sound made several aliens jump backward. "Amazing," shouted Vorgan from the front row. "You're actually changing the shape of matter with a metal blade." "It's just a saw," Tommy said, but he was starting to understand how incredible this must look to beings who had never seen physical tools in action. As he continued cutting pieces for the birdhouse, Tommy noticed something strange happening in the crowd. The aliens weren't just watching anymore. They were talking to each other, sharing observations and asking questions. Some were even taking notes. "Excuse me, Tommy," called out a small, furry alien with 6 legs. "But why do you sand the wood after cutting it?" "Good question, Tommy," replied, picking up a piece of sandpaper. "We sand it to make the surface smooth and safe for the birds. It also helps the pieces fit together better." He demonstrated the sanding technique, and the alien audience watched in fascination as rough wood became smooth under his hands. "This is remarkable," said a silver-skinned being with crystals growing out of its head. "You're not just building something, you're improving it as you work." Tommy was in the middle of explaining how to drill pilot holes when disaster struck. He was reaching for his drill when his foot caught on the extension cord. He stumbled, knocked over his work table, and watched in horror as his grandfather's massive pipe wrench came crashing down from its display stand. The wrench was so heavy that when it hit the ground, it made a crater in Tommy's lawn. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that it landed directly on top of Vorgan, who had been leaning in for a closer look at the drilling technique. Came Vorgan's muffled voice from under the wrench. "I'm trapped under this magnificent tool." Wah! Tommy rushed over and tried to lift the wrench, but it was too heavy for him to move alone. "Click, Sporp, give me a hand here." But as soon as Tommy's alien friend started helping, something unexpected happened. Zara, who had been quietly watching from the side, suddenly started glowing. Not just a little bit. She lit up like a blue neon sign having an electrical malfunction. "Oh no," she said, her voice crackling with energy. "This always happens when I get stressed." The glow got brighter and brighter until Tommy had to squint to look at her. The other aliens didn't seem bothered by it, but every human in a 3-block radius could probably see the light show. "Zara, you need to calm down," Tommy said, still struggling to lift the wrench off Vorgan. "I'm trying," she replied, but the glow was spreading. Soon she was flickering like a broken light bulb, casting dancing shadows across the entire backyard. That's when Tommy heard the sirens. Multiple sirens, getting closer by the second. "Great," he muttered. "The police are coming." "Actually came," Vorgan's voice from under the wrench. "Those aren't your local authorities. Those are the Galactic Tool Enforcement Officers. They handle disputes over rare and valuable implements." "There are space police for tools?" Tommy asked incredulously. "Oh, yes," Vorgan replied cheerfully, considering he was still pinned under. 6 feet of solid steel? It's very serious business. Tool theft. I may have forgotten to mention that I'm currently banned from 17 star systems for aggressive collecting practices." The sirens got louder, and Tommy could see flashing lights approaching from the sky. Meanwhile, Zara was now pulsing. so brightly that car alarms were going off throughout the neighborhood. The news crew that had been filming from across the street was having trouble with their cameras because of all the light. "This is insane," Tommy said, finally managing to lift one end of the wrench with help from 4 different aliens. Vorgan crawled out from under the tool, looking a bit dazed but surprisingly happy. "What a rush!" he exclaimed. "That close to such a powerful tool before?" "The weight. The presence. It's even more magnificent than I imagined." "You almost got squashed flat and you're excited about it?" Tommy asked. "Absolutely," Vorgan beamed. "This has been the most educational experience of my collecting career." 3 gleaming white spaceships landed in the street, and beings in what looked like cosmic police uniforms began marching toward Tommy's backyard. They all wore badges that seemed to be made of tiny spinning galaxies. Vorgan, the collector, called out the lead officer through some kind of space megaphone. "How good you are. Under arrest for attempted tool theft and violating your restraining order from this solar system?" "Oh dear," Vorgan said, not looking particularly worried. "I suppose I should probably run now." But before he could move, something wonderful happened. All the other aliens in Tommy's backyard stepped forward, forming a protective circle around. "Vorgan, wait," called out Clicks. "He wasn't stealing anything. He was learning." "That's right," added Borp.
Tommy was teaching all of us about human craftsmanship.
Even Squeaky joined in, making indignant squeaking sounds that somehow conveyed the same message. Tommy looked around at all these beings from across the galaxy, defending someone who had come to steal his tools just because they'd shared a learning experience together. Despite everything that had gone wrong, he felt a warm feeling in his chest. Maybe this crazy day was about to become something truly special. The space police officer in charge looked like he'd seen everything the galaxy had to offer, but even he seemed confused by the scene in Tommy's backyard. His name tag read Commander Zintox, and he had the tired expression of someone who'd broken up to many interstellar disputes. "Let me get this straight," Commander Zintox said, looking around at the crowd of aliens protecting Vorgan. "You're all defending a known tool thief? He's not a thief anymore," Clicks protested, waving all 4 of his arms. "He's a student." Tommy stepped forward, still amazed that he was about to defend someone who had tried to steal his grandfather's wrench just an hour ago. "Commander, I know this looks weird, but Vorgan really was just learning. We all were." Commander Zintox raised one eyebrow, which was quite a feat since he had 3 of them. "And you are?" "Tommy Rodriguez. This is my house, and those are my tools." Tommy gestured toward his garage. "These folks came to see them, and I ended up teaching everyone how they actually work. Humans don't usually defend alien criminals," the commander observed. "Well," Tommy said, thinking about it, "maybe that's because we don't usually get the chance to understand each other." Zara, who had finally stopped glowing like a disco ball, stepped up beside Tommy. "Commander, what if I told you that Tommy's workshop demonstration has led to the most successful cultural exchange in documented galactic history?" "I'd say you're exaggerating," the commander replied dryly. "Actually, she's not," said a voice. From the crowd, everyone turned to see a small, elderly alien with wrinkled blue skin and kind eyes making her way to the front. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, and she carried herself with obvious authority. "Ambassador Trixie," Commander Zintox said, suddenly standing much straighter. "I didn't know you were here." "I arrived just in time to see the most remarkable thing," Ambassador Trixie said with a smile. "A human showing aliens how to create something beautiful with their own hands." "Do you know how rare that is, Commander?" Tommy blushed. "It was just a birdhouse." "Just a birdhouse?" Ambassador Trixie repeated. "Young man, in my 300 years of diplomatic service, I've never seen beings from so many different worlds work together so peacefully, and it all started because you were willing to share your knowledge." She walked over to Tommy's workbench where the half-finished birdhouse sat among wood shavings and tools. "This simple project has taught us more about human culture than a dozen formal exchange programs." Commander Zintox looked skeptical. "It's still my duty to arrest Vorgan for his previous crimes. What if he paid his debt to society by helping instead of hiding?" Tommy suggested. "I mean, look how excited everyone got about learning to build things. Maybe Vorgan could help teach others about the value of actually using tools instead of just collecting them." Vorgan's 3 eyes went wide. You... dot dot. You would trust me to help with something so important? Sure, Tommy said. You know more about tools from across the galaxy than anyone. And you saw how amazing it felt to watch something being built instead of just sitting on a shelf. Imagine if you could help other collectors discover that same feeling. The human makes an excellent point, Ambassador Trixie said. Morgan, what do you say to 100 hours of community service, teaching others about the joy of craftsmanship? I would be honored, Vorgan said, and Tommy could see tears forming in his 3 eyes. Commander Zintok sighed. Fine. But if he steals even one screwdriver, he's going straight to the galactic prison on Pluto. Deal, Vorgan said quickly, as the space police packed up their equipment and prepared to leave. Tommy realized that his backyard was still full of aliens who seemed reluctant to go home. So, he said to the crowd, anyone want to help me finish this birdhouse? The response was overwhelming. Aliens who had been taking pictures suddenly wanted to try sanding wood. Others asked if they could measure pieces or help with the painting. Within minutes, Tommy's simple one-person project had become a community effort involving beings from across the galaxy. Mrs. Chen, who had been watching from her kitchen window, finally came outside. Tommy, dear, I don't suppose you could introduce me to your friends. My granddaughter will never believe this unless I get some pictures. Soon, Tommy's neighbors were joining the workshop too. Mr. Peterson brought over his own tools to help. The Johnson kids from down the street started teaching Squeaky how to play hopscotch while the adults worked on the birdhouse by sunset. Had built not just one birdhouse, but 7 of them, each designed by a different alien species to attract the birds from their homeworlds. Zara's birdhouse had tiny LED lights that would help nocturnal birds find their way. Clicks made one with for different entrances. Borp created a triangular design that somehow looked both alien and perfect. As the various spaceships prepared to depart, Ambassador Trixie pulled Tommy aside. You've started something special here, she said. We'd like to make this an official program, the Galactic Cultural Exchange Initiative. Would you be interested in being our Earth coordinator? Tommy looked around at his transformed backyard. His quiet suburban life would never be the same, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Will I get to keep my tools? He asked. Ambassador Trixie laughed. Young man, after today, I think your tools are going to be famous throughout the galaxy. But yes, they'll stay right here in your garage where they belong. 3 months later, Tommy's house had been converted into the first intergalactic workshop center. Every weekend, beings from across the galaxy came to learn about human craftsmanship. Vorgan had become Tommy's assistant instructor, and he was surprisingly good at teaching patience and respect for tools. Zara still lived in Tommy's spare room, but now she helped coordinate the exchange program. She'd also learned to control her stress glowing, though she still lit up a little whenever Tommy taught her something new about woodworking. The birdhouses they'd built that first crazy day were now on display in the Smithsonian, on loan from the ordinary guy from suburbia who taught the galaxy that the best tools are the ones that bring people together. And Tommy's grandfather's massive pipe wrench? It stayed right where it belonged, mounted on the wall of Tommy's garage, where it could inspire new generations of craftspeople from Earth and beyond. After all, some tools are too important to collect. They're meant to be shared.